Mhm. So welcome to our collaborative session here with integrating the social emotional learning standards with the learning of mathematics. With me, I have Nicole Kaler. You want to introduce yourself, Nicole?
Morning, I'm Nicole Kaler. I am a school climate coordinator in the Office of Whole Child Supports, which was previously the Office of Integrated Student Supports at the Ohio Department of Education. So I typically work on building capacity with positive behavioral interventions and supports in schools. And I focus a lot on our mental health initiatives as well as social emotional learning initiatives. I have a background in mental health and I am a licensed social worker.
And for those of you who don't know me, I'm Annika Moore. I'm one of the math consultants at ODE. I've been with ODE for a little over 10 years now. And I'm very passionate about incorporating social and emotional learning into the math classroom so that we get kids happy and thriving in the math classroom. So next slide, please, Nicole.
It's going, it's a little lagged.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
There. So for those of you who've been with us, you know this slide by heart now. We do have an exit ticket at the end. We post a link to that. We would like feedback for you, whether you want contact hours or not. So please, I saw yesterday that everybody who answered the exit ticket wanted contact hours, but there were about half of them who didn't want contact or didn't answer. So even if you don't want your contact hours, you don't have to get that email, but please give us feedback. If you want closed captioning, there is the opportunity down at the bottom to request that. And we will, of course, put that in place. It is the session is being recorded. We will post it on our website. Give us a week or two because we have a lot of sessions here that are being recorded and will be posted. And if we take the next slide, we will look at our meeting norms. So we have always had these norms to be respectful and supportive, to recognize that everyone has expertise. We assume positive intent, seek clarification in language and ideas. Please share experiences if we ask you to, and use the chat feature. We were really good at the session here prior, so please keep that up. But mute your microphone when you're not speaking, please. And the next one, I believe, slide is yours, Nicole.
All right. So again, my name is Nicole Kaler. I will be starting our presentation today. We will talk a little bit about the whole child framework within the Department of Education. We'll become familiar with Ohio's social and emotional learning standards. So as we say social and emotional learning a lot, I may also interchange it with SEL. We will share ideas for implementation of SEL in the general classroom and then explain how to integrate SEL and math. So again, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the chat or save them for the end, but feel free to use the chat as we go throughout. So I'm going to first touch on Ohio's strategic plan for education and learning. This is a comprehensive plan that was developed in 2018 by the Ohio Department of Education. It's really intended to make sure that every child that is served in the state of Ohio is challenged, prepared, and empowered for their future. So this strategic plan, which is up on the screen, does include pre-K all the way through 12th grade. You can see on the screen there are 4 equal learning domains, and it's not just for academic content. It also includes leadership and reasoning and social emotional learning, which we'll talk a lot about today. And then it also has 3 core principles that really drive the strategic plan. So equity, ensuring that all the students in Ohio have an equal access to education and equal education. Partnerships, looking at everybody who's involved with a child to make sure that their education is the best that it can be. That includes families, caregivers, as well as community partnerships, school districts, providers, and then quality schools. So equity and partnerships lead into quality schools, but we really want to make sure everybody is working together to meet the needs of the whole child, which is at the center of our strategic plan. So the whole child framework, which is at the center, this is also the office that I'm housed out of, is really at the center because it gives a framework for everybody working with children in schools to make sure that they reach the success they need. So again, you can see the families, the community partnerships, which include schools, providers, districts, working together for the physical, social and emotional wellness, safety, and intellectual development of a child. And as educators or administrators, it's important that you're aware of what the whole child framework is, because that should really guide a lot of your practices or policies when you're working with your students. We know that when students are healthy, when they feel safe and they're supported, they're more engaged in their learning and they're more likely to reach academic success. All right, and we can't talk about social emotional learning or anything that has to do with students without touching on the impact that COVID-19 has had over the past year and unfortunately continues to have for us. So we had changes in our daily routines, lack of predictability day by day, and we're still seeing it happen. Increased fear and anxiety, which could be for ourselves, for loved ones, or maybe humanity. Extended periods of isolation, maybe during the initial period of quarantine or as an ongoing basis, and limited access to food and safe shelter. So all the factors that are on this screen are risk factors to mental health and well-being. And it's really important to think about that as educators, as administrators, as we plan for this upcoming school year. And given that there's still a lot of changes occurring, to remember that all staff and students have been through this collective trauma. So we need to remember this as it guides our practices, as we think about our interactions that we're going to have with our students as the school year starts. And remember that a lot of our students didn't have the same access to resources and safety nets that maybe they've had in previous years. So when we start this school year, remember taking things back to the basics. Last year, whether you had students who were fully remote or in a hybrid version, the school year looked nothing like it's ever looked like before. So really, when we're talking about social emotional learning and just the social and emotional wellness of students, we want to take it back to all the basics, give them a predictable learning environment, review expectations, do this a lot in the beginning of the year. Your students are really going to benefit from it. All right, so I've been talking about it. What is social emotional learning? This is the definition provided by CASEL, which is also the collaborative for academic social and emotional learning. I'll provide some of their information at the very end, but it's a really great resource around all things social emotional learning, including a lot of current topics and current research around it. Okay, so social emotional learning is the process through which young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, achieve personal and collective goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. There is a lot of research around the benefits of social emotional learning, and it demonstrates that it's a huge, important part to human and educational development. Social emotional learning advances educational equity and excellence to establish learning environments that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction, and ongoing evaluation. So by integrating social emotional learning into our academic environment, we can address inequity and empower young people, and then later adults, once they have those skills, to create safe, healthy, and just communities. Why is it important? Why are we talking about it so much today? I am very passionate about this topic. So I already mentioned that it does tie a lot into our educational and human development. For students, it teaches them skills around self-regulation, so how to calm ourselves down when we're feeling frustrated or even focusing, problem-solving skills, how to reach our goals, and how to manage stress. So it also helps students learn how to build peer-to-peer and peer-to-staff relationships. And there is a lot of research that shows that students who have strong social emotional learning skills show more academic success in the school environment, which also then leads to further career and life success in general, because they have all this foundational skill set. For staff, they benefit too when it's integrated into the school environment. So if they are using it more in their classroom, they typically end up being more engaged with their students. They can manage classroom conflict better, and they create these safe learning environments where students feel like they can grow and work towards that academic success. In schools, we talked about, so I already talked about students can manage their stress, they build those stronger relationships. All of these factors lead to better school climate. Students want to be in school, or they have trusted adults that they can go to, and which will then lead to things like decreased discipline referrals or decreased behavioral concerns. Because when students struggle with social and emotional learning, when they have those skill gaps, they don't do well in the classroom. They present with behavioral concerns. Those are the students that present with those externalizing behaviors. So they act out, they talk loud, they're unfocused. So when students have these skills, that you see discipline referrals decrease, you see overall school climate improve. And then for community, because the social emotional learning teaches students how to be good citizens, how to care about other people, how to work towards kind of a collective good, we call it. It really helps the community in the long run because it teaches them how to contribute to society. And then as they attempt to get careers following school, they contribute more to that community that they may be working in. So we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and that's true in social emotional learning as well. It really is the responsibility of all adults in a child's life. So it starts at home. When the child's at home during the day, they go into school. It shouldn't just be the responsibility of a school counselor or school social worker or one teacher who's passionate about it. It's really the responsibility of everybody. And then it'll flow into the community when they go to extracurriculars or faith-based activities. So when we all work together, we will really see that improvement in the social emotional learning of a student. This goes back to the whole child framework where everybody's involved and it's everybody's responsibility to meet the needs of the whole child. So here on the screen are Ohio's 5 competencies that were established in 2019 as our social and emotional learning standards. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. I'm going to go in depth about what all of those mean shortly. But just a quick note that these standards are voluntary. So each district and school should really look at their needs in the community as well as their values and decide how they should be integrated into their school system. Ohio will not ask for anything around social emotional learning with the report card or performance measures or anything like that. It's also important to note that we really encourage the social emotional learning standards to be integrated into the academic day rather than to be a separate class that's taught. So we don't want it to be extra work for educators. We don't want it to be extra work for students. It really should be integrated throughout the day. So later in the presentation, I will talk about general classroom integration, and then Annika will talk about specifically in math. Okay, so our first competency of self-awareness is the ability to accurately recognize one's own emotions and thoughts, including how they relate to one's identity and culture and how they influence behavior. It's the ability to accurately assess one's strengths and limitations with a sense of integrity, confidence, and optimism. So each one of our standards has a general explanation. And then underneath, if you look on our website, it also has some topic areas or skill sets that we would want students to be able to accomplish if they demonstrated this competency. So at the end, I'll give you the resource for our website. But under self-awareness, that would include things like demonstrating an awareness of personal emotions, demonstrating awareness of personal interests and qualities, including strengths and challenges, and demonstrating awareness of and willingness to seek help for self or others. And then self-management. This is the ability to navigate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors across different situations while managing stress, controlling impulses, and motivating oneself. Self-management includes the ability to set and work toward personal and academic goals. So this may look like regulating emotions and behaviors by using strategies that are consistent with brain development, set, monitor, adapt, and evaluate goals, and persevere through challenges and setbacks in school and life. Social awareness is the ability to consider diverse perspectives of and empathize with others, including those from diverse backgrounds and cultures. It also reflects the ability to understand social and ethical norms for behavior across settings and to be able to identify and use family, school, and community resources and supports. So this might look like recognizing, identifying, and empathizing with the feelings or the perspectives of others, demonstrating consideration for and contributing to the well-being of the school, community, and world, and demonstrating an awareness and respect for human dignity. Relationship skills is the ability to establish and maintain healthy relationships with diverse individuals and groups. Developing relation skills promotes the ability to communicate clearly, listen well, cooperate with others, resist social and peer pressure, and negotiate conflict and seek help or offer it to others. So students may be able to do things like apply positive verbal and nonverbal communication and social skills, develop and maintain positive relationships, and demonstrate the ability to prevent, manage, and resolve interpersonal conflicts in constructive ways. And our last competency is responsible decision-making, which is the ability to make constructive choices about personal behavior and social interactions within the context of ethical standards, safety concerns, and social norms. It also involves making realistic evaluations of consequences of one's actions in the consideration of well-being for self and others. So students who demonstrate this competency should be able to develop, implement, and model effective decision and critical thinking skills, identify potential outcomes to help make constructive decisions, and consider the ethical and civic impact of decisions. All right. So I'm going to speak to a very broad sense of how you incorporate SEL into the everyday instruction. And then, like I said, Annika will speak more specifically around math. But like I mentioned earlier, we really want social emotional learning to be taught within the academic framework, rather in the activities throughout the day, rather than as a separate course or something separate altogether. It will save educators time, and it will really help interweave into the framework of your day. So some of the practical interventions that you can do or that you can start with is using common language to identify social emotional learning skills. So really take time to define what that looks like in the classroom. You can give positive reinforcement when students display those positive social emotional learning skills in class. So not just focusing on academic achievements, but really focusing on when they do something positive, like sharing, age appropriate, right? Sharing with peers, raising their hand quietly, getting back on task after they were struggling, calming down when they're frustrated. You can use team-based projects or discussions, which will encourage your students to collaborate, solve problems, and compromise. You can hold class meetings to give students the opportunity to practice effective communication skills and also maybe communicate with students they wouldn't normally speak to. You can keep families updated about the work in your classroom and connect it to social emotional learning skills so they understand what you're doing, as well as how to encourage it and reinforce it at home. You can use project-based learning, which will allow students to use both the SEL skills and their academic skills like they're in the real world. You can encourage students to use their voice by asking them to communicate and discuss what they've learned. Encourage them to practice providing and receiving constructive feedback and engage their peers in their discussions. Allow students time to reflect on situations and talk about their feelings. Remember, everything needs to be age appropriate, so younger students may need a lot more support in this and practice labeling their emotions and their feelings. You can align academic and social emotional learning goals with each other and learning standards. So you want to emphasize achieving subject matter content, but also learning critical thinking, problem solving, and communication skills. And then routinely build self-regulation activities into your class time. I think this is really important in terms of math. I know a lot of students struggle with math. It becomes frustrating or difficult for them. So ask your students to identify what activities are calming for them versus stimulating, and then incorporate that into your class time, even if you only have your students for a 30-minute, 40-minute block. So for example, yoga or deep breathing or quiet meditation may be something that's calming. So you may want to incorporate that when they first come into the classroom, especially if it's after like lunch or recess or something like that. And then something like dancing or walking or jumping around might be more stimulating. So if you notice your class is struggling, they're in a slump, nobody's answering, get them up, get them moving. It can be 2 to 3 minutes. That's really all it needs to be. If you're not familiar with Go Noodle, I suggest you look that up or to put on a quick YouTube video. But I think that's a huge area that if you integrate into your classroom, into your class time, your students will respond really, really well to that. Some of the research behind regulation activities shows that for every 5 minutes of difficult instruction, you should really have a 1 minute regulation break, whatever that would look like for your group, for your age group. But I really think that that's a huge piece. Okay, so I gave all my information around the SEL competencies and standards. If you go to the Ohio Department of Education's website, we do have a whole page around social emotional learning. There's resources for teachers, for the district, for that if you wanted to share with families, but your families can also access it. It gives a breakdown of the content, as well as some practical information about how you can integrate it in the classroom. And coming soon, I don't have an exact date yet, but we do have some resource guides that will be coming out for teachers and for parents. And it's broken up by pretty much grade band around our social emotional learning competencies with practical ideas of how you can integrate things in the classroom. A lot of what I just mentioned, but more specifically connected to those competencies. On our website, we also have the link to CASEL that I mentioned earlier, which is the collaborative. I really, really value CASEL's resources around their implementation. They have a lot of different guides, some big picture things around district and administrators, but also what you can do specifically as an educator. They also have a lot of resources and articles on current trends in social emotional learning, and a lot around obviously COVID and how that's impacted our students. They have a lot of webinars that you can find on YouTube. So if you're looking to take a deeper dive, if you want some more information, that's definitely where I would start. My contact information will be at the end of the presentation, but if you ever have questions, you can email me. If you go to the Department of Education's website under social emotional learning, there's also a social emotional learning mailbox, and I manage that. So if you ever have questions, feel free to send me an email. So now I am going to turn it over to Annika.
Nicole, we had one question. This
Sure.
Erin is asking about what that site was, the Go Noodle.
Go Noodle. I love Go Noodle. So it will depend a bit about the age group you work with, but honestly, I think any age group would like it. Go Noodle is actually you can pay for the full site, or if you go to YouTube, you can find all of their resources on there as well. These are all regulation activities. There's calming, there's stimulating, there's silly songs, there's dances, there's deep breathing exercises, there's meditation, there's yoga. I mean, honestly, it's endless. So if you go to the Go Noodle website, some of it is paid for, some of it is not. And if you use the paid site, there's different challenges you can do with your classroom and different characters and things like that. But if you don't want to pay for it, it's all on YouTube. And I highly, highly recommend it. Get your students started with it at the beginning of class, take a break in the middle, close it with it. I have seen nothing but positive impacts from my past experiences. Prior to coming into the department, I worked in a couple school-based settings. So highly recommend looking into it.
Thank you, Nicole. So now I'll start sharing, and maybe you look like this. Can you see my screen now? I don't have.
I can see it.
You can see it. Is this how you feel? Like, oh, one more
every day.
thing.
Every day.
Got to integrate SEL with math. But if you listen really carefully to what Nicole was talking about, those are our math practices. So it is not yet another thing, right? So the self-awareness, give them opportunities to share and we have a math practice that says, you know, critique the thinking and reasoning of others and share your thinking and reasoning. That's exactly what this self-awareness is. We just have to help the kids share their thinking in an appropriate way. We also need to, the first bullet here, to elevate the voices, to allow the kids to share their strategies. And not, you know, sometimes we just want them to do it one way, but we've seen that there are so many different ways a kid can think, and have them share that. Some of your students are very quiet. They sit and they have brilliant ideas. They have thoughts that you want to share with everybody. How are you going to get them to share, strategically share the work that they have been doing that you want to, you know, exhibit for your class so that the other kids have an opportunity to learn? The collaborative structures, we know that when kids collaborate and work together, they learn better. And then the last one, we have to, as teachers, as adults, position the students as mathematically competent. We have to show them that what they know. And one of my mantras there is, what do you mark on a paper of work from you students? Do you mark that which is correct, or do you mark that which is incorrect? And I remember when I started with my 9th graders in Canton City, and I would put check marks, that was right, right, right. You know, you just go through the list, and they came back and they were all up in arms. What do you mean, Miss Annika? Is this wrong? No, this is all the correct stuff. This is all the right. Well, my other teachers put a check mark when it's wrong. And so the kids are, at least in math class, I experienced by the 9th grade, they were so used to having everything that was wrong marked, instead of us really pointing out to them, this is what you know, now you need to just build a little bit more. And one of many ways is then to have them create their own world problems. And I know in elementary school, teachers oftentimes give them just an equation, a symbolic sentence, right? A number sentence, and then they have to make up a story problem about that. We can continue that in middle school. We could continue that all the way up in high school as well, so that they see the connection with real life. The self-awareness is the feedback, the ask open-ended questions to have them go deeper into their thinking, and knowing their strengths, knowing, of course, also their weaknesses where they need to grow. That is part of what we need to do in math, right? The self-monitoring, having your students say, this week or today or this lesson I learned this, and that, so that they know what they learned, is building their self-awareness and promoting the growth mindset. If you are not familiar with Joe Bowler's and Carol Dweck's work on math and growth mindset, you need to go to the Joe Bowler's website called YouCubed, YOUCUBED. Every student can learn that what we want them to learn, and the brain grows when we are in productive struggle mode and when we collaborate with others. We have recent brain research now that shows it. You know, the brain lights up in different places, and so we have to promote that growth mindset. And so for us as adults to promote and to grow and foster the self-awareness in our students, we can ask questions like, what information do you have, and what do you need to find out? What predictions or generalizations can you make? Can you explain that? What do you notice? What do you wonder? It's part of math, right? What do you notice? What do you wonder? It is not, SEL is not something extra. It is something that we should be doing. If we really study our math practice standards, this is what it is. The self-management, giving them freedom. I mean, we've heard about choice boards. We've heard about a menu way of putting a main dish or an appetizer, main dish, and desserts, having the kids have some choice. And then if they want to, work deeper into a problem, allow them that time for their reflection, for organizing, for kind of straightening up what they have learned. And then to ask them questions to encourage the kids to think about, this was difficult and how can I go about, what tools do I have, who can I ask for help from. That's the self-management, instead of throwing in the towel and just exploding, or going into yourself and just sitting there quiet and waiting for math class to be over. Encourage them to identify the barriers and seek help, right? With the math. The self-management, again, if they set their own personal goals, if they set a goal within a group that they're working with, it helps them to manage themselves, right? So also allowing them to tell you what they want to improve on. And I was talking in my previous session about the journal that my 9th graders wrote at the end of the week. This is what I learned, and this is, I was in a group with Joey this week, and I never thought we could manage 5 days working together, but by golly, I did. I knew it was for 1 week. And so those things for them to be aware of, how they grow and how they manage their behavior with others. Why was it helpful to do whatever, to ask for help or to draw or to make a table, or, why was that helpful? And then also manipulatives. Again, the manipulatives go and the drawing go all the way from K through 12th grade, right? We can't just make math this abstract number crunching subject where kids, 90% of our population will tell you they were not good at math. They don't like math. We can't have that, right? We have to get 90% of our population saying, I can do that. I can do math. Yeah, sure. So how can we get that to happen in our classrooms? Encourage them to reflect on their barriers, yeah, and then teach them how to use equipment and resources appropriately, and expect that from them. Don't tell them today you need a compass and a protractor, and today you need graph paper. Allow them to choose their tools, right? Allow them to choose to go find information maybe online. Teach them to work just like we do. If we need to find something, I will Google it in a heartbeat, and maybe the kids could do that in your math classroom also at times. So for self-management, you can ask questions like this. How do you know that whatever they're looking at is a pattern? And why does whatever it is happen? Why does the number get larger when we divide a fraction by a fraction? And how do you know? What information do you have? And then again, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Great questions for the self-management, instead of having the kids just hit a wall and get frustrated. And like I say, just throw in the towel, right? Ask them what the problem is asking them to find, help them with those entryways. Another question that I love is this always true, never true, or sometimes true? And what connections are there between this math and that math? What connections are there between this problem, the gardeners, for instance, that we had earlier this morning, and the, the bagel problem that we had 2 months ago? What connections can you see? Help them see the connections between math and math. And the social awareness. We have to have mathematical discourse. We have to assume positive intent with the kids. We have to teach them how to listen to each other. And one of the things that we often do as a teacher is we repeat a student's response, which gives the signal that you need to just listen to the teacher, because the teacher will repeat what the student said. And instead, where we have to get the kids talking, and they need to be talking with each other, not teacher, student, teacher, student, teacher, student, rather student, student. And we have to teach them that. How do you do that? How do you ask the same questions that I'm modeling with you? How do you do that in your small group activity? And one way I did that was I put the starters of questions around my classroom. And you know, so for instance, these questions, what is the problem asking me? So when the kids were frustrated, I would look up and I would find the question starter, and then I would pose that, and down the line, my ninth graders actually learned to use those starters in their groups as well. The normalized mistake making, that is like huge. There is no mathematician who works with mathematics like at the top level who has not made more mistakes than correct things. There is nobody who has just gone step by step by step by step to know everything about mathematics that they know today without making mistakes. We have to normalize mistake making. It has to be a learning process. So even if I make a mistake today, maybe I will get it right tomorrow. And that ties together into how we grade and how we mark our papers that we give them. You know, putting a 0 in a computerized grade book, we know the math. It's going to take 10 A's to bring that 0 up to anything, right? One trick I learned when I had to put grades into a grade book was an F, or the 0, was always like 60, 69%, because then 70 was the D. So if they got 69%, I knew they had not done it right, or they hadn't, you know, done the assignment. The kids knew it, but they had a living chance to get a decent grade once they did their work and showed me that they knew what they were doing. There is one activity a teacher does very often, is calling that my favorite no. So she pulls work from kids, and this is my favorite mistake. Like, this is a mistake kids do all the time. And then she goes over that. And celebrate the risk taking, you know, really openly and transparently in your classroom. You know, thank you for sharing that, you know, and just making them okay with making mistakes. And I had a picture in my previous session, if you want to go back to that, if you weren't there, this fail is the first attempt in learning. To fail is the first attempt in learning, FAIL. And so we have to acknowledge that, and we have to moderate our grading based on that mindset. Social awareness, we have to give them time to work with their classmates, to value, to listen to each other, make connections between different kinds of representations, share. How did you do it? How did I do it? That is, should be a normal happening in a math classroom, nothing new. What questions do you have for Joey? If you don't understand what he's doing, what questions do you have? Do you agree or do you not agree? How might your words impact others? All of these different questions. Did you try a method that didn't work? That's a beautiful question, because that's an important learning that the kids, they walk down into a cul-de-sac, they have to know to turn around and choose a different strategy, a different method, right? So that can be very easily incorporated into the math classroom. And of course, the relationship skills, the cooperation and communication, it works hand in hand with the social emotional competencies, but also with our math practices. We have to provide regular collaborative opportunities. And if you think about regular, if you think about exercise, what does regular exercise mean? Does that mean once a week, like Fun Fridays, or does it mean regularly on a daily basis? So the collaborative opportunities should be way more than just Fun Fridays, to have them be able to talk and reason, and then you know, solve problems within their little group. If you need to, there are probably discussion protocols that you can find out on the web, but you can also, you know, create your own with your group of students. And so if they need to have something to go by, like everybody needs to have a voice and it has to go around the table and listen to each other and maybe paraphrase what the others said. So there are those kind of activities that you could use to teach this. Giving feedback to each other that doesn't hurt each other, you know, not saying, no, you're wrong. Oh, that's wrong. Rather, maybe asking it as a question. So how did you get that answer? You sit there and you see that your peer has made a mistake. Instead of pointing it out that that's wrong, ask them instead, you know, how did you get that number? And allow that student themselves to say, oh, wait a minute, I better go back to the drawing board. I better fix my numbers here. So it's beautiful when it starts working in your class. The kids get really comfortable with coming to your math class. And like we talked about this morning, if you're in a big task and it's a big problem that you're trying to solve, even if the bell rings, it's quite all right, because they'll go home and still mull on it. And when you have the kids saying, we're going to continue working on this tomorrow, right, Miss Annika? You know that you're in the right place. Or when they walk into your classroom and ask, what are we working on today, Miss Annika? What's the problem we're going to work on today? And that doesn't happen if they only work on, you know, the problem 14 on page 85 in your math book. So the relationships also, these are sometimes in your journal. Were you able to describe your idea for your group? That could be something that they look at in their journal at the end of the week. Did you listen well when your peers described their ideas? Did you get a new idea for improving your work? Did you notice others using your idea? How was your idea related to a different problem that you've worked on? And then what traits do you value most in a team member? That's part of us setting the classroom norms within our group, right? So it's nothing new. SEL is nothing new. We just have to be very intentional about it. Same with the responsible decision-making skills that offer think aloud strategies. And you know that sometimes when we sit and work, we think aloud. I know that especially when I'm learning something new, I will sit there and talk to myself, and people around me will think I'm getting too old. But you know, this is a way of organizing your thoughts, is thinking aloud. And then give them scenarios where they have to decide, like in data talks or in tasks with a lot of data, what data am I going to use? What am I not going to use? Why? Or even in a word problem, like what information here do I need? What do I not need? So don't give them just always the bare minimum, but a little bit more, so they have to make these decisions. And one thing I'm thinking of, the outliers, when we're talking about outliers and data and statistical problems, you know, should we include that outlier? Why or why not? Because sometimes we maybe need to include it and sometimes we shouldn't. So good decision making, I know, for instance, with the behavior, I always marked that what was good. So I walked around with a class list and I would say, great question, Joey. And I put a plus sign next to his name, right? Oh, thank you for sharing your thoughts here, Samantha, and plus sign beside her name. And so I marked that what the kids were doing right in their work and the behavior that I wanted. So, and they really bought into that. So questions, how can you represent the problem with symbols and numbers? Can you explain what you've done so far? What questions do you have? Why does whatever happen? Is this working, or do you need to change your model, right? And what has been the impact of my decision so far? These are just standard questions. And so integrating SEL standards with the mathematics is something you can do. I want you to have this mentality when you leave us today, that I can do this. So please, when Nicole is going to post, or if she has posted, I haven't seen that yet, but the link to the social emotional learning standards, please go look at them and see, yes, I can do this, but be very intentional with it. Like, maybe overdo it at the beginning. And with that, I'm going to ask you if you have any questions for us, and open the floor. We've run through this fast because we wanted to leave room for questions. Oh no, don't tell me it's a quiet group.
I don't have a question. My name is Laura. I teach 3rd grade. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So I teach at Bloom Carroll School District in Fairfield County, and our district had someone come in she was about 3 years in a row off and on to do professional development and some math. And a lot of what you're talking about is related so much to what she did. And I just would throw that out there to anybody to look up some of her information as well. She does a lot of, you were talking about connecting math problems, connecting math to math, and she is a huge proponent of that. And just getting kids to see her big phrase, what do you see? What do you notice? And when you said that, it just completely pulled it all together. But her name is Jonna Lee Zupanzik, and I'm not sure if others may have heard of her as well, but she's wonderful.
Can you put that in the chat, please?
I will. I'm not sure how close I'm going to get her last name, but I will try.
That's why I'm asking you to do it, because I could definitely not get close to it.
Yeah, I will try to look it up real quick and kind of double task here while I'm listening. So yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, and if nothing else, then if you find that it's totally off, then you could send it to me, and anybody who would like that name could contact me. My email is on the math website at ODE. That would be super. Great, thank you for sharing. So you're just down the road from me. I'm in Canal Winchester. Do you still have math coaches down there in Bloom Carroll?
I had you on mute so I could, so I thought I was done there. Can you hear me again?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, I'm on my phone. I apologize.
Okay.
I'm sorry, ask that again. You're in Canal Winchester.
I think, yeah, so you're just down the road from me. Do you still have math? Do you still have math coaches?
We do not, no. Jonna Lee coming in was part of a math initiative we had going forward, and we kind of felt like at the moment, at least, and then with COVID coming on, we had kind of taken it as far as we could. Now we just needed to really work on implementing some things. And she's, it kind of sounds like a commercial for her, but just her style of teaching us and modeling some things that she would do in the classroom, because she goes into the classroom as a math coach, and she's followed a cohort of kids from kindergarten, and I forget what grade they're in now. I want to say 5th or 6th grade. So she takes math data from real kids that she's worked with, and she also does little seminars. But I just looked her up, and I will put it in the chat. It's called Minds on Math. So, and I want to say she's over in the Pataskala area.
Okay, Matthew. Matthew's
We were
saying
talking about she's in actually down in, last time I heard Granville. She was teaching in Gahanna, but I know she did run stuff out of Granville. 'Cause like I
Okay.
said, task
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Yes.
And Matthew is saying he's a new hired math specialist by the ESC. Which ESC is that, Matthew? Central Ohio.
Yeah, for Central Ohio. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, nice. Thank you. And I have put the exit survey in the chat for all of you. Again, of course, if you want the CEU certificate, you need to fill it out, but we would also like feedback from all of you. So please, please fill that out and give us feedback. We do read it. We adhere to it. We learn from it, and so please do that. And then we have Nicole's contact information. And basically the tail end is the same for all of us. And then we also have the math team, which we are all for on the web page if you look for math. And I thought there was something else I was going to say. Yes. So at 2 o'clock, at 1 o'clock, we have a team of teachers, 2 teachers that are sharing how they integrate Algebra 2 with physics. So any high school teachers there, if you have an Algebra 2 teacher here and you have your physics teacher, you should contact them and get together and listen to the 1 o'clock math session, integrating Algebra 2 and physics. At 2 o'clock, we have a session called Celebrating Student Brilliance. That's targeted to grade 6 through Algebra 1. And at 3 o'clock, we have Quality Materials from Info Ohio, also targeting grade 6 through 12. So all our sessions are being recorded, well, except for the open forum, and they will be posted in the future, as we say on our math team, soon. They will be posted soon, and as well as the PowerPoint slide decks will be there. So you won't receive it in an email, no, Megan, but they will be posted on our website. So know that. And again, we do want the feedback. Do you want me to post that link again? So you have it really handy, dandy, and so that we may learn to do these sessions even better. And with that, I wish you a fantastic rest of the day. I want to thank you from ODE for all the hard work you have done in the classrooms around Ohio especially for the past year and a half, but of course for your whole career. But this last year and a half, I just cannot imagine what it's like. And I really hope that you are afforded to stay safe in the coming school year. And I wish you a wonderful, wonderful school year. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. So now for math anyway, there's a break until 1 o'clock. And we hope to see you back there. Algebra 2 and physics. It's more high school, yeah, this afternoon. Sorry, K5, you had a lot yesterday. So thank you and have a great year.
Thanks, Annika.
Thank you. Now stop sharing my screen, yeah.